Yo, what's good, Vibers? I am super excited to bring you this early showcase of our brand new hunter hitting the breach with the patch this week, Crysta. Crysta is a nuclear engineer that was guarding a nuclear reactor during the Rising, and as a result of that, she was transformed into a soulborn made of nuclear energy. As an engineer, she figured out how to harness this nuclear energy known as Nuclarite through the use of her two drone companions known as Maybelle and Boo. In my opinion, she has a very refreshing kit compared to the rest of the SUPERVIVE lineup, and it is basically a long-range burst mage. My goal for this video is to give you a basic understanding of this hunter and her abilities so you can get out there and start blasting right away. Alright, let's start it out with Crysta's LMB, her primary attack, which are her drones, and these are known as Maybelle and Boo, basically Nuclarite drone companions. You can see as I'm shooting it here, it has very long range, but the pathing sort of slows towards the end. It also doesn't have a crazy fast attack speed, so there is a significant amount of time in between shots. Upgrades to this ability will increase its ability power ratio, making it hit harder, and this ability directly interacts with double dash, which is our shift, as well as our passive reverberation. So anytime we shift forward, we're actually going to be able to fire two of these shots at once. And the kicker here is it actually, using the dash will reset the cooldown of the auto. So you can see if I'm autoing, if I dash immediately following an auto, you see how it'll instantly reset my shot timer so I can shoot those next two instantly. So in general, when you're using the shift interaction with the LMB, you're going to get the highest value out of it immediately following a shot, and using it in this way will essentially let you shoot 3 shots at once. So because of the kind of slowing effect that happens on this projectile, she's going to end up being really good at playing backward, especially when we consider how the passive is giving her shift charges, similar to the way Bishop kind of interacts with her shift, where the more you're kind of landing your LMBs, the more kind of shift power you're going to have, and that's going to let you be very good at kiting backward. She's also just very good at kind of like spray and praying into fights from pretty far away, and all of her abilities really feed into that, where if you do get some damage out far away, you can like follow it up with everything you got at like a really far range, right? Now, our LMB also detonates Reverberation, our passive. Your abilities mark enemies that your basic attacks and ult detonate for X amount of damage. Gain 30 mana and 2-second reduced charge time on double dash shift each time this happens. So basically, any ability we use that's not our LMB is going to mark enemies with this Reverberation mark. If we successfully then hit them with an LMB, the mark will detonate, we'll get mana back, and we'll get 2 seconds off of the next charge of our double dash. So when we look at which abilities can apply reverberation to be detonated, it's basically everything except for our LMB and our left shift. So the next 3 abilities we're about to talk about will apply this detonation mark that will then be able to be detonated by the LMB. The first of these is our R&B Flux Snare. Fire an energy snare that does X amount of damage on the way out, then returns to you, pulling, dealing damage, and grounding targets it hits on the way back. So think longer range Shiv Bolo that damages on the way out and then has this CC effect on the way in, grounding and pulling targets back. We can see this passes through characters, so you are able to hit multiple people with this. And we can see from the tooltip, we can actually hold down input to steer the outgoing missile. So if we hit R and B and kind of turn our camera, like we saw right there, it actually just ricocheted off this pillar. But check it out, we can actually fling this thing with a bit of a, sort of trajectory to it and change its position. If we throw it straight, it has a really far range here. But we can also sort of, you see, curve that range a bit, shorten the range, and kind of change the trajectory, knowing that on the way back, it's going to ground and pull hunters towards you. The more you're kind of like playing backward, like we were talking about, like the more kind of crazy range your snare is going to have returning to you, and you're often going to be able to catch people off guard that are sort of chasing you when that's like on its way back on its return, right? That ground that happens is actually going to be really good for like self-peel. So if you're kiting away from hunters with like mobility tools to chase you, yeah, like a bishop ult or a brawl dash or something like that, hitting them with the return of the R&B as it's on its way back to you, which a lot of times they're not expecting because it already passed them, will hit them with that ground and kind of stop them from engaging on you. Remember now, level cap is 15, so every ability has 4 levels instead of 3. So if we look at the upgrades for Flux Snare, ranks 2 and ranks 3 are going to give us each a 25% damage increase with 1 second off the cooldown. If we take this ability to the max of 4, it's going to give us negative 10% cooldown per character hit. So similar to other characters such as like Ghost Laser, if you fully upgrade this ability, successfully connecting it will give you cooldown reduction. Our second ability that can add our reverberation passive to be detonated by our LMB is our Q Magireactive Burst. Press to fire a damage zone to a target location, press again to detonate, dealing X damage to enemies in the zone, and it will auto-detonate after 6 seconds. So if we see what this looks like, it's essentially a projectile that shoots out, and then it's going to have this AoE effect on the ground. The effect will last a certain amount of time and then explode, but we can also detonate it early by pressing Q again. We can also see, just like our auto attacks and just like our R&B, our Q has a very long range to it. If we take a look at the upgrades for this, ranks 2 and 3 are each going to give it 10% damage with a second and a half off of the cooldown, and the final rank at 4 will make the charge explode a second time after a short delay. So remember now, if you're able to connect either your R&B or your Q on anyone, they will be marked with Reverberation. You will then be rewarded with extra damage if you hit them with an LMB, and if you do proc that Reverberation, you're going to get this 30 mana back and 2 seconds reduced cooldown on your double dash. Speaking of dash, let's take a look at this before we jump to the ult. Short dash with 2 charges empowers Maybelle and Boo, which is our LMB, primary fire, to fire 2 shots and reset its cooldown. So we were looking at this with the LMB, but basically, if you're shooting your LMB, as soon as you shoot it, you can essentially use your dodge, your double dodge, your shift, to cancel, kind of the cooldown that's happening right here on this attack, and shoot instantly the 2 rockets that come from the double dash. We can see, without firing, if I just double dash, I'm going to have a loaded shot with 2 rockets right there. So what I can do is I can reset the cooldown of my auto attack with the double dash and basically get 3 rockets at once like that. And like we just mentioned, it's going to be very important to keep in mind that every time you're able to successfully proc your Reverberation mark, you're going to be getting cooldown reduction on your 2 charges of double dash. You are very much incentivized to proc your marks coming from your Q and coming from your R&B and also your ult, which we'll get to in a second, not only for the extra damage and the mana back, but also for that extra reduced cooldown on the double dash so you can keep threading the double shots. Real quickly, if we look at the upgrades on our left shift, we have -4 seconds off of the charge time for levels 2 and 3, and then the final level will make it so proccing our passive will actually give us a full charge back. So if you're looking to really lean into the mobility of Crysta, taking your double dash to level 4 will not only take 2 seconds off the charge time like normal, it'll also give you another full charge back. So if you're successfully applying your Reverberation and detonating it with this level 4 double dash, you are going to be getting a bunch of dash resets automatically, because you'll be getting not only 2 seconds off the charge cooldown, but also just a full one of these bars back instantly. Keep in mind, just like a lot of hunters, you can also dash during all of your abilities. So if we're doing our R&B, we can dash during it. If we're doing our Q, we can dash during it, and we can get really long range out of it that way. And same thing with our R. So if we start our ult and we need to dash for some reason, we can do that right in the middle of it. The shift also has kind of the normal Schmovement Tech that we see on a lot of hunters, where we can carry the momentum from the shift into our glide. And so we can do this off a jump from the ground, or if we're gliding already, we can shift glide again, and that allows us to carry the momentum from our dash into our glider for just much more distance in general. All right, now finally coming to her ultimate, Nuclarite Salvo, which it is a flashy ultimate. It looks really fun to use. I've pressed it a few times. It feels pretty good. Unleash the Magireactive power in you, sending a barrage of 5 high-energy beams toward the target location, each dealing X amount of damage. Shots alternate over each shoulder, firing 2 projectiles on the last shot. Now the kicker here, shots detonate and apply Reverberation. So what that means is not only is every ult shot going to proc Reverberation if it's on the target, it's also going to apply it itself. So hitting multiple Nuclarite Salvo rounds in a row is going to be repetitively proccing your Reverberation mark. And we can see this has an even more insane range than basically everything we've done so far. It's almost to the full edge of the screen, looking south or north if you are controlled out. And so the most damage from it is going to come from already having your Reverberation mark on a target from either your Flux Snare or your Magireactive Burst. And then if you open with Nuclarite Salvo after that and you're hitting your shots, each shot should not only consume the previous Reverberation, but then reapply it, so a following shot that hits will detonate and reapply it again. What this means is essentially the more of these ult bullets you can hit in a row, the bigger your burst is going to be. And if you're able to hit multiple followed by the 2 final ones at the end, it is going to be a huge amount of burst damage. And if we look at the upgrades on our ultimate, we get 10% damage with 5 seconds off the cooldown at level 2, and the same thing at level 3. Because of the sort of range and raw power of this ultimate, it's going to be very good at comboing with other hunters. Think Void ult, think Oath Abyssal Breaker, think Bebo Tonk Tonk. Any of your teammates' abilities that kind of CC and group people up in one spot is going to be a perfect time to completely unload with the R. And you could see right there, there's a very interesting mechanic to it that based on how far away your cursor is, that midline of the ult will change. So look, if I ult close to me, it's going to have, you know, they're going to have like this crossing effect going on. But if I aim at max range, it's going to be, you know, more of like a linear path. And so basically, depending on where your cursor is at in the line of the ult is going to determine, you know, kind of like how crisscross they are in this manner. So I think her ult is going to have like a lot of potential and really end up being a big part of her kit. And the other thing to consider with it is it's got sort of a restriction on the yaw, I believe it's called, when you're firing. So look, if I fire north and try to turn it right away, I can't do a brawl 360. My turn rate is sort of limited as soon as I enter that ult animation, right? And so keep that in mind. You can't like flick it, but you can move it, and it does move fairly fast. It's just not, you know, kind of like flick speed. Final thing about the ult is if you hold LMB while you're ulting, you'll instantly do an LMB auto attack with the final shot of the ult. And what you can do if you have a shift charge up, if you want to really burst, is follow that last auto with an instant shift double shot to cancel the auto cooldown and also get the double shot off the shift, which would look something like that. All right, now bringing it all together, let's take a look at what a super simple combo could look like for maximum DPS. So let's say we're able to successfully hit someone with our R&B, our Flux Snare. From this point, they're going to be marked with Reverberation. If we're able to hit an LMB, that's going to detonate the mark and give us cooldown reduction on our dash, right? So what we want to do if we have full dash charges is actually use the dash with that auto, because remember, our dash cancels our auto. So let's say we hit our R&B, we want to auto and instantly cancel that auto cooldown with a dash double shot. So it's like you hit your R&B, then once the mark is on them, you auto shift auto, and that's going to give you your triple shot, right? And if you shift before you proc the mark, you're going to get cooldown reduction back on your shift. And remember, if you have this fully ranked, you're actually going to get not only 2 seconds off the cooldown, you're going to get a full charge bar back as well. As soon as you've done that, if you're able to successfully land any part of your Q, so imagine you hit your R&B and then auto shift auto, this R&B is going to ground and pull them back slightly. In that window, what you want to try to do is get your Q under them. And remember, you don't have to wait for this to go all the way. You can pop it again yourself. So if you're able to get your Q under them while you're doing this little part of the combo, right? Like you hit your R&B, auto shoot auto, and right as you're coming up, you Q under them. If you can get the mark from your Q, then they're just going to get like deleted by your ult, because the first ult bullet's going to proc the reverb and then reapply it, and every following bullet is going to detonate and reapply. So if we imagine a burst combo, it could look something like R&B into an auto shift auto, and we Q during that, and if we're able to proc our Q mark, we insta follow it with a huge ult slam. And we could even weave another LMB sequence in there, right? Where if we wanted to proc that Q mark again, we could R&B, auto shift auto, Q, auto shift auto, ult, dead as fuck. Boom. So that is our new hunter Crysta, the Nuclarite Burst Mage. I hope you found that helpful. I'll be doing my best to eventually bring you guys a more in-depth guide on this once we've all had much more time to figure her out. Until then, I can't wait to see you guys out there blasting on her. With that, I just want to thank you so much for watching. Remember to take care of yourself and keep vibing. Catch you in the next one. Peace.